No, I think my guess is, this is a bounce which I think has been seen today. My sense is, unless and until we see a strong earnings growth numbers, Tamanna, from the frontline IT companies, I think even as of now, as we speak, I think the headwinds, especially from the US and European markets, still continue. So I would not be surprised that this could be a temporary kind of bounce. We need little more clarity, and I would not be surprised that at least a couple of quarters before we see strong traction. I think there's no doubt that the US economy is picking up, and that could translate into better order book kind of positioning for Indian IT companies. But I think it's still a long way before we could see some sort of big re-rating, especially in larger companies like TCS, or for that reason HCL Tech, Infosys. So this is probably a small short-term bounce. We have been telling our clients that in case they want to bet on a contra kind of call, then I think Tata Technologies looks to be quite well positioned. The stock looks pretty attractive, and I think in terms of their positioning, they're slightly unique and different from the other IT companies. So it's trading at a fairly decent kind of valuation. Our sense is that over the next say 12-15 months, one could look at a price target of around 1250, 1275. So typically, I think certain stocks look attractive, but I think broadly the trend would get more clearer after maybe a quarter or two. Yeah, I think Tamanna, if you talk about Uno Minda, I think the market is quite excited considering that their exposure on the electric vehicle segment is pretty large. They've got marquee customers, and most importantly, most of these are OEM kind of clients. So the stickiness in terms of revenue, in terms of the volumes, is assured. I would not be surprised that even in the current year, that is in FY25, both the domestic market, both for the IC engine kind of product models and the electric vehicle models, we could see a good strong volume growth plus a margin kind of uptick. And plus with the kind of initiative, the company has been taking for a lot of joint ventures, even the export market is going to open up for them. So, this has been reflected in the kind of movement in the stock price. But as Kunal said, I would be also looking at buying the stock at a slightly lower level. Today, the stock is up by almost 14-15%. So it's better to wait for some time. But I think investors who have invested earlier can definitely expect FY25 to be much better than last year. And as far as some other interesting, auto hang stocks, I think the frontliners like Bharat Forge, Sundaram Fasteners, or typically even a company like Mahindra CIE, which actually is into a lot of engine components. I would not be surprised that the current year should be a lot better because commodity prices have eased off. Automotive sector as a whole is growing pretty well, and I think companies which are present across all the segments like two-wheelers, four-wheelers, tractors, utility vehicles are companies where I think one should bet upon because that is where they could get the maximum volume and price benefit. So I think net any decline or any kind of correction in these stocks, if at all, should be used to accumulate these stocks and build on positions. My guess is I think PSUs definitely look an interesting basket, Neeraj. But at the current valuation, I would be a little cautious. I would not be surprised that possibly if I were able to get these stocks at a slightly lower valuation. Companies like Garden Reach, Musgao Dock, Cochin Shipyard. These are all companies which have got excellent order books with them. I think for the next 12 to 18 months, and I think revenue visibility is assured. The same thing with Midani. I think a very specialized, product manufacturer which caters to both the defense and the space markets. So I think one could definitely cherry pick these stocks and on any market decline. So I think we are positive on these stocks, but we have been telling our clients that use declines to average these companies because here the roadmap and the runway over the next say 2 to 3 years looks very strong. So we are positive, but we would not be buying at the current levels. And as far as the private sector names are concerned, we still feel that companies like Larsen and Toubro, Cummins, these are companies which have got strong kind of growth trajectory, signals going forward. In fact, Cummins, we are very positive because we feel that the new government, once it's formed, I think the new hydrogen policy would be announced. And I think that is going to be a very strong trigger point for Cummins, which has already got a very strong hydrogen, product portfolio. So I think L&T at the current levels, Cummins also probably at these levels because these are companies which are undoubtedly in their product categories market leaders and they enjoy very large order books. And of course, if certain government initiatives come in, specifically for hydrogen related, kind of verticals, that is definitely going to be a very big trigger for a company like Cummins. So we are trying to do a cherry and picking approach. I think we are not in a hurry. Markets would give opportunities for investors to actually buy, obviously some stocks at lower levels, and that could be a good time to make an entry so that your alpha and your risk reward, obviously gets better. Tamanna, I think my sense is that it's always better to take a mature call and analyze the situation once things are completely clear. I think now one thing is very clear that the NDA government is going to take over again. But I think in terms of the allocation of the portfolios, we really don't know what is going to happen. If there are some negative surprises on the allocation of portfolios, then I think the markets may not like it. But broadly, I think, as your colleague also mentioned, that the most important portfolios like finance, defense, home, external, affairs, if these portfolios are maintained, then I think the markets would definitely greet the position solidly. But I think a pound of flesh, from the alliance partners cannot be ruled out. So I think probably, some important ministries, both at the central level as well as the state level, may have to be given. And I think even post the swearing in ceremony, I think the markets would then await the prime minister's 100-day point agenda. That is something which is more important. Once he gets sworn in as the prime minister, the markets are more clear on what are the policy initiatives, what are the sectors which are going to be in the limelight. Once he takes over. And finally, in the month of July, the budget is going to be the main deciding factor. If the budget fulfills the market expectations, then I think the runway for the market could be significantly better. So I think even as of now, I think there could be some ups and downs. So I think it's better to be very careful. I think, of course, one can obviously follow a stock specific approach, but I think to go all out immediately on Friday would not be the a wise decision. No, I think clearly my sense is I think post the monsoon performance, I think the second half for FY25 Neeraj should look pretty solid and interesting. Rural demand is now going to be a key element of the government strategy also. I think a lot of initiatives could be announced by the government for rural related kind of measures. So I think ITC could be a big beneficiary considering the fact that it's got a very strong rural reach. And most importantly, now the much expected hotel demerger is also complete. So I think around 425, 435 could be a good price to actually accumulate the stock. The stock has remained silent for a pretty long time, and hopefully volume growth inches around 8 to 10%. Typically on the FMCG side, I would not fundamentals continue to be intact, but I think if at all the Godrej Group decides to exit and sell their investments in VIP, then I think it's going to be a little, concerning at least in the short term. But I think otherwise, my sense is, we need to have a little more clarity as to actually what has been the issue and how this issue can be resolved. In the very near term, the stock could remain in a very small range, Neeraj, until some more clarity comes from the top management. I think most of the institutional investors would require a little more clarity before I think they take a final call. And we are quite positive on this segment, considering that there are very few players, hardly 2 to 3 large players which operate in the luggage space. And I think this segment has been growing very well in tune with the hospitality segment. So I think net any decline, I think I would be a buyer on the stock. These things are definitely concerning, but these are temporary kind of setbacks. The longer term story for VIP continues to be quite solid.